He owned the room, but his eyes had never belonged to the crowd, not when she was in it. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories. Some people fall in love loudly. Others never say a word, but feel it for years. This story is for those who waited in silence, who loved without asking, who hoped without rushing. If you've ever wondered whether real love notices you, even when you don't see it, stay with me. Because tonight, a man who never looked away will finally speak the truth. Now, let's begin. The ballroom glittered like a jewel box cracked open. Above the crowd, chandeliers poured warm light over glassware, sleek tuxedos, and $100,000 dresses. A quartet played softly in the far corner. Laughter, polished and expensive, floated over the clink of champagne. Sterling Dane didn't hear any of it. He stood near the back, near the bar he never touched, with a crystal glass of untouched bourbon in his hand. His suit was black, custom, sharp. His cufflinks were platinum, though no one ever got close enough to notice. That was the thing about Sterling. People always looked at him, but they rarely saw him. Tonight, even less so. Because he wasn't looking at the stage, or the investors shaking hands, or the real estate mogul pitching numbers to a venture fund on the far left of the room. He was watching her, Kayla Wynn. She didn't walk like she wanted attention, but she had it anyway, not because of the gown she wore. It was simple, dark green, quiet against her skin. Her hair was pulled back like she hadn't planned to impress anyone. And maybe she hadn't. But Sterling hadn't looked away since she walked in. She hadn't seen him yet. Of course she hadn't. To Kayla, he was just another guest, background noise in a room full of rich men talking over each other. But Sterling knew her. He remembered the exact pitch of her voice, the way she smiled when she was tired but refused to show it. He remembered her hands, slender fingers with short, clean nails, no polish. Most of all, he remembered her eyes, the way they used to look up at strangers like she was already expecting disappointment, and dared them to prove her wrong. It had been years since that rainy night in the coffee shop. Years since she asked him, decaf or full risk, with a half smile and a question behind it. She didn't know he'd been watching over her life ever since. And she definitely didn't know he owned the entire building they were standing in. The night he met her, he was soaked from the rain. No bodyguards, no press, no last name on display. He'd stepped into a corner cafe to escape a sudden storm, hoping for warmth, anonymity, and maybe 15 minutes of silence before going back to a tower full of executives who couldn't breathe unless he gave permission. Kayla had been working the closing shift. Her hair was up, her apron stained. She looked tired, but not fragile. And when she looked at him, really looked at him, she didn't blink like most people did when they realized who he was. She didn't know. And that made him forget how to breathe for half a second. "What'll it be?" she asked. He hadn't answered right away, so she tried again. Decaf or full risk. The way she said it made him smile. Quietly. "Full risk," he finally said. She handed him the coffee. Black, no sugar. He reached for his wallet. She waved him off. "On the house. You look like you needed the kind someone doesn't charge for." She was already wiping down the counter when he tried to speak again. The rain had gotten worse outside. Thunder cracked in the distance. She handed him her umbrella. "I'll take the rain," she said again, like it didn't bother her. And before he could stop her, she walked into it. No name, no way to find her. She didn't just leave the shop. She took something with her, a piece of quiet he didn't realize he'd been holding on to. He could have sent his assistant to pull footage from the cafe security feed that same night. Could have traced her name, number, home address, everything, with one call. But he didn't. Instead, he waited. A week. 2. He went back to that cafe twice. She wasn't there. On the third visit, he saw her through the window, her hair down this time, smiling at a co-worker, moving fast behind the counter. He didn't go in. He didn't want her to see him as that man, the kind who used money to make moments his own. He left, and that night, he sent one person. Quiet, no interference, just observation. find out her name, her story. What he learned hit harder than he expected. Kyla Wynn, 24, psychology student at a local college, working 2 part-time jobs, one at the cafe, one as a weekend receptionist at a small dental office downtown, living in a 1-bedroom apartment she could barely afford, supporting her father, a retired city mechanic recovering from a major stroke. No siblings, no safety net, and still, she walked like she wasn't waiting for rescue. She didn't know how close she came to walking out of his life forever. That night, Sterling made a decision. He wouldn't approach. He wouldn't disturb her path, but he'd make sure it stayed clear. Back in the ballroom, Sterling's grip tightened on the glass in his hand. He'd watched her survive, watched her graduate, quietly funded her final year when a scholarship fell through. He helped when her rent spiked, made sure her father's care home got a private donor, all anonymously, never once asking for credit, never once sending a message, because she didn't need saving. She needed space to rise, and he needed to wait, until he was the kind of man she could respect if she ever learned the truth. Tonight, fate took that choice away from him. She was here, and he wasn't ready. But his silence? It was finally breaking. Kyla's eyes swept the room. For a second, they landed on him. No recognition, just a passing glance. But something in her paused, just a moment. Sterling's heart picked up. He wasn't sure if it was hope or panic, because everything he'd hidden for 5 years, it was standing 12 feet away, holding a champagne glass and breathing the same air again. And this time, he couldn't walk away. Sterling had never believed in fate. He believed in algorithms, in human patterns, in calculated risk. But tonight, the universe hadn't asked for his permission. Kyla Wynn stood in the very room he'd built from scratch 5 years ago. One. He designed for power brokers and press events, for mergers and milestones, and she didn't even know she'd stepped into the heartbeat of his world. Sterling shifted slightly where he stood, still near the far corner, watching her with an intensity that hadn't dulled in all the years apart. She didn't belong to this crowd. Not because she wasn't dressed well or didn't fit the aesthetic. She was beautiful, unapologetically so, but her presence wasn't sharpened by ego like the others. She wasn't here for favors or headlines. She was here for someone else. Sterling's jaw flexed. She'd come with her best friend. He knew that. Her friend was an interior designer who'd just finished the renovation of one of Sterling's corporate towers. The gala was celebrating the reveal, but that wasn't what made his chest feel tight. It was that Kyla was laughing, genuinely, talking to someone, tucking a curl behind her ear, and he was still just standing there, the same way he had 5 years ago when she walked into the rain without asking his name. He had kept his distance since, but only because he believed she deserved to live her life without the shadow of a man like him hanging over it. Billionaires didn't fall in love with waitresses, not without swallowing them whole. He had no right to interfere with the life she was building, but that hadn't stopped him from watching. After the cafe encounter, he'd gone back 3 times before he saw her again. The 3rd time, he sat in a car across the street, engine off, window barely cracked. She was inside, smiling at a CO worker, wearing the same denim apron. But something in her posture had changed. There was no umbrella, no rain, but she looked just as soaked. That was the first night he sent someone. Discreet, no contact, no surveillance. "I just want to know who she is," Sterling had said. It wasn't curiosity, it was gravity. She'd done something no one else ever had. She looked at him and didn't see money. Didn't try to pitch an idea or snap a photo. She gave him coffee and her only umbrella and walked away. She didn't owe him anything. And for a man who had everything, that made her unforgettable. It didn't take long to get her file. Kyla Wynn, 24, psychology major, in her final year at Belmont, on scholarship. Father recently suffered a major stroke. She was his primary caregiver, worked 2 jobs to cover the gaps, day shifts at the dental clinic and night shifts at the cafe. No boyfriend, no siblings. no close family nearby. She had no time for anyone, and still, she smiled like she carried no weight. Sterling hadn't planned to get involved, but then her scholarship was cut short by a funding error. He watched her scramble for solutions, heard she was going to drop a semester to catch up. He wired the tuition that same night. Under the Belmont Emergency Academic Aid Fund, no names, no flags, just a cleared balance. Then her landlord tried to raise her rent by 20%. He bought the building, reduced her rent, paid for a renovation of the faulty plumbing in her unit. She received a notice saying the building had been acquired by a new firm, and as a long-term tenant, she was getting a rent reduction. She told her father it was a miracle. Sterling told himself it was decency, but it wasn't. It was love, unspoken, unspent, unreturnable. He made a rule that he would never interfere with her choices. He wouldn't step in unless something tried to break her, and even then he would only remove the threat quietly. She didn't know his face, but he knew hers. The way her smile drooped when she got tired, the way her posture changed when bills were due, the way she looked at her father like he was the only man that mattered. That man, Mr. Wynne, had once driven buses for the city. Sterling sent a check every Christmas to the Community Retirement Association that supported his housing. Kyla never found out. She just kept moving forward, unaware that the man she once gave her umbrella to had been building invisible walls around her life to keep her safe, and he would have kept doing it forever. If she hadn't walked into the gala tonight, for the first time in years, she was in the same air as him, and he felt like that man in the cafe again, the one who forgot how to speak. Across the room, Kyla looked up. Their eyes met, his chest locked. It wasn't recognition, not yet, but something passed through her gaze. A flicker, a sense of pause. He didn't move, neither did she. Then she turned and excused herself from the conversation, making her way across the ballroom, not toward him, toward the exit. She stepped out onto the rooftop balcony, alone. Sterling's pulse changed. He handed his glass to a passing waiter, and followed. He didn't plan the words, didn't plan the timing. He just knew something was finally louder than his silence. He stepped into the cold air, the city stretching below them like a map of all the choices he'd ever made. Kyla stood with her back to him, hands on the railing, wind in her hair. She didn't turn, but she spoke. "You always liked the quiet, didn't you?" Sterling's voice was steady. "I did." She turned slowly. Her face didn't flash with surprise, only recognition. "I only said that to one person," she said. He nodded once. "And you gave him your umbrella." She stared at him, not angry, not scared, just still. "Who are you?" she asked. "Someone who's loved you longer than he should have stayed silent." Kyla blinked. Once, the wind caught a strand of her hair. Her arms folded. Her weight shifted slightly. "Then, I think you'd better start talking," she said. And for the first time in 5 years, he did. He told her everything. Not with drama, not with guilt, just truth. The cafe, the scholarship, the rent, her father, all of it. She didn't interrupt. She didn't flinch. She just stared at him. And when he finished, she asked quietly, "I didn't need a billionaire ghosting through my life. You know that, right?" "You didn't," he replied. "That's why I never made a sound." Kyla looked away. The city glittered below them. She let out a breath. "So why now?" Sterling looked at her like the answer had been waiting in his chest forever. "Because loving you in silence doesn't count if I take that secret to my grave." She looked at him again, and this time she didn't look away. If you've ever loved someone in silence, or wondered if someone was quietly holding you up when you didn't even know it, like, comment, and subscribe to Mr. Charles' Stories. Because sometimes the deepest love isn't loud, it's patient, and tonight, it finally spoke. The air shifted after she asked him that question. So, why now? Sterling had rehearsed the answer in his mind more times than he cared to admit. Late nights, elevator rides, boardroom lulls where he stared out at the skyline, pretending it wasn't her face he was seeing. But now that she was standing in front of him, real, unscripted, waiting, he didn't want to give her a prepared answer. He gave her the truth, because I thought I could carry it. All of it, the silence, the watching, the distance. But I was wrong. The longer I stayed quiet, the more it stopped feeling like love and started feeling like cowardice. Kyla didn't speak. She leaned back against the railing, arms folded. The wind played with the ends of her hair, and the city lights flickered behind her like an unspoken warning. He'd stepped out here thinking the hardest part would be the confession. But it wasn't. It was what came after. She broke the quiet first. You helped with my rent. Yes. You paid my tuition. Yes. You covered my father's care. He nodded. And you didn't want anything in return? No, he said softly. I only wanted you to live your life without the weight crushing you. Her brows pulled together. You didn't think knowing might have mattered to me? Sterling hesitated. It would have changed things. It would have made you question what was yours and what was mine. She looked down. That's a lot of power to hold over someone. I never used it. But you had it. He didn't answer that, because she was right. That was the tension he'd lived with for 5 years. The line between love and control, between quiet care and manipulation. Every time he wrote a check or moved a barrier out of her way, he had asked himself if he was still honoring her, or just protecting his guilt for not speaking sooner. Kyla pushed off the railing. Her heels clicked once on the stone floor. I should go, she said. Sterling's pulse shifted. Kyla. But she didn't storm off. She turned, looked him straight in the eye and said, You didn't take anything from me. I want you to know that. You didn't ruin anything. You didn't interfere with my dreams. A pause. And I'm not angry you helped me. She took a breath. I just wish you'd trusted me enough to tell me. He nodded, slow and steady. I wish I had too. She turned again and started for the door. He didn't follow. Not yet. Sterling stayed out on the balcony for a long time. By the time he returned to the ballroom, she was gone. Her best friend had left too, likely together. The gala was winding down, but the press hadn't missed anything. He caught the way 2 photographers were whispering as they glanced in his direction. No one had pictures of the rooftop conversation. That mattered, because this wasn't just about Kyla anymore. He'd opened a part of his past that could never be closed again. And now, she knew everything. And it was out of his hands. The next morning, Sterling didn't check the markets. He didn't scan headlines or respond to the email marked confidential merger decision waiting in his inbox. Instead, he pulled up the number he had stored but never used. Kyla Wynn. He hadn't called it. Not once. His team had updated him periodically, where she was, how she was, but he never breached the barrier. Now he typed a message, then deleted it. Then typed again. Eventually he just wrote, I'd like to see you, if that's something you'd want. No strings, no cameras, just 2 people with coffee. He hit send, then turned his phone face down and tried to pretend the world hadn't shifted. Kyla saw the message an hour later. She didn't respond right away. Her best friend, Renna, looked over her shoulder while they were walking through a boutique in Midtown. That him? Renna asked. Kyla nodded. Renna raised an eyebrow. You going to meet him? Kyla didn't answer immediately. She was holding a mug in her hand. White, simple. The kind she used to serve strangers at the cafe. Now she studied it like it was a memory. Renna nudged her. He helped you, but you don't owe him your time. I know, but maybe you owe yourself some peace. Closure, maybe. Kyla nodded, still quiet. Then she texted back. Tomorrow, park bench, the one near the art museum. Sterling arrived 10 minutes early. No suit, no tie, just jeans, a black sweater, and a baseball cap pulled low. He'd never looked more unlike himself. Kyla showed up on time. Black hoodie, hands in pockets. They sat down without a greeting. For a while, neither of them spoke. Pigeons fluttered past, A little girl chased bubbles from her father's wand a few feet away. Then Kyla said, "You looked smaller in that coffee shop." Sterling smiled faintly. "That's probably the last time anyone said that to me. Do you regret it?" He turned toward her. "What? Not telling you sooner?" "No. Loving me like that." He didn't hesitate. "No." Kyla leaned back on the bench, exhaling. "That's the part I can't wrap my head around." "You didn't know me." "I did," he said. "Not everything. But I knew what mattered." She turned to face him. "And now?" His eyes didn't flinch. "Now, I'd like to know more. If you'll let me." Kyla didn't answer. Not with words. But she reached into her hoodie pocket, pulled out a folded napkin, and handed it to him. On it was written, "Full risk." He unfolded it slowly, recognized the handwriting, the same one she used to write names on coffee cups years ago. She stood. "I still don't know what this is, Sterling, but I know it deserves a fair start." She turned to go, then stopped. "Same time next week?" He nodded. And just like that, he got his second chance. The following week, Sterling showed up to the park bench again. Same time, same spot. Kyla was already there. She was eating a soft pretzel, hair tied back, oversized hoodie pulled over her knees as the breeze kicked up around them. She didn't look like someone waiting for a billionaire. And that's what made Sterling sit down without hesitation. "Hi," she said casually, handing him a second pretzel from the paper bag on her lap. "No coffee today?" he asked. She looked at him with a hint of a smirk. Pretzels felt safer. He accepted the food, pulled off a piece, and they sat in silence. A good one, not awkward, not loaded, just two people watching a city move past them. "I used to come here when I skipped class," she said. "Don't tell my professors." Sterling chuckled. Statute of limitations expired. "I think," she shrugged. "I liked listening to people, trying to figure out their stories without ever asking them, 'Did you ever figure out mine?'" She looked at him, long enough to make him pause. "No, but I remembered your voice. The way you said 'full risk,' like you didn't use that phrase often." He blinked. "That stayed with you?" "Most people don't take chances, especially not in public." She folded the empty pretzel bag and tucked it beside her. Sterling leaned back, letting the moment breathe. "You know, I had this idea in my head for years," she said, "that the guy in the cafe probably forgot me after a day. I couldn't forget you after a minute." Her lips tightened slightly. "You could have ruined my life, Sterling. I mean that." He didn't flinch. "I know." She turned toward him fully. "You were smart not to speak. You were also cruel not to." "I know that too." Another pause. Kayla rubbed her thumb along the crease in her jeans. "But then again, you weren't trying to date me or buy me. You were just holding space." Sterling nodded. "That's all I ever wanted to do, until I was worth the words." She tilted her head, like she was still deciding what to do with that sentence. "My life's quieter now," she said. "Dad's in a better place health-wise. I work with kids now, community center stuff, low pay, high chaos. Sounds perfect for you." "It is. And it's mine." She looked at him again. "And you're not here to take that from me, right?" "I wouldn't dare." "Good." She smiled. "For real this time. Not a test, not a mask. Because I don't do power games, even if I'm in a room full of suits." "You never had to," he said. "You've had power the whole time." That made her go quiet. Not because she didn't believe him, but because, deep down, she was starting to. Over the next 3 weeks, they met again. Once at the park. Once at a bookstore where she liked to browse without buying. Once at a late-night food truck where they sat on the curb eating tacos in silence. Sterling never pushed. He didn't touch her unless she leaned first. He didn't ask about her father unless she brought him up. He let her take the lead. And every time they parted, it was with something subtle, a hand squeeze, a smile, an unfinished thought. They didn't define what they were, but the space between them was closing, gently. One night, after their 4th meet-up, Kyla called him, not texted. Called. Sterling answered on the first ring. "My stove's broken," she said. "I was going to fix it myself. But do you know a guy?" "I know a few," he said, "but I'd rather come see it myself first." A pause, then softly, "Okay." He arrived 15 minutes later, no entourage, no driver, just him, holding a small toolkit, even though he hadn't fixed anything himself in a decade. Kyla opened the door in sweatpants and a banned tee. Her apartment was warm, small, and smelled faintly of lavender and garlic. Leftovers sat on the counter. "I burned dinner," she said. He smiled. "That's okay. I burned most of my 20s. She led him into the kitchen. The stove was genuinely broken, though she'd already tried to fix it with pliers and some internet advice. He knelt down, inspecting it, not because he thought he could repair it, but because the effort mattered. After 10 minutes, he stood. "I'm calling a real tech in the morning. This isn't just a loose wire." "Thought so." They stood there for a second, the space between them narrowing by inches. Kyla looked up at him. "You didn't have to come. I wanted to." She stepped back slightly, not out of fear, just hesitation. "I don't know where this is going," she said. "Neither do I," he answered. "But I'm not asking for anything more than time." Her expression shifted, softened. "Okay," she said. Then she turned, walked to the cabinet, and grabbed 2 mugs. "Tea." He nodded, and just like that, she let him stay. They didn't kiss that night. They didn't cuddle on the couch. He sat on one end. She sat on the other. They talked about childhood memories, old songs, small heartbreaks, and what kind of dog they'd want someday. It was the first time Sterling let himself be seen fully, without status, without armor. And Kyla didn't ask for anything he wasn't ready to give. When he left that night, she walked him to the door barefoot. "Thanks for showing up," she said. "You've no idea how long I've been trying to," he replied. She leaned forward and kissed his cheek, not with hesitation, but with recognition of what had always been there, unspoken, unrushed. Sterling had spent his life walking into rooms where people stopped breathing when he entered. Meetings paused. Staff stood straighter. Conversations rewound themselves to suit his presence. He was used to being the one with the edge, the unseen advantage. But Kyla Wynne didn't care about the weight of his last name. She didn't care that the penthouse he lived in had its own elevator, or that his signature could turn entire buildings into museums. She only cared about who he was when no one was looking. And lately, Sterling had to admit, he was learning that version of himself for the first time too. He sat alone in his study that evening, lights low, a single lamp casting a quiet halo over the folder on his desk. It wasn't a business file. It wasn't a quarterly report. It was her. The original observation report he'd commissioned 5 years ago. He hadn't looked at it in over a year. But tonight, something made him pull it out, not to review her background, but to remind himself who she'd been. Before him, before his invisible hand ever touched her path. Kyla had always been strong, resilient, sharp. She didn't rise because of him. She rose in spite of everything that tried to hold her down. He closed the folder and leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. He didn't regret helping her, but he regretted how long he'd waited to face her as a man instead of hiding behind his resources. Because now, sitting in silence, he felt it for the first time. Vulnerability, not the kind he could deflect with money or charm. The kind that came from being known, and maybe wanted, but not owed. Meanwhile, across the city, Kyla sat on her fire escape, a chipped mug of tea in her hand, hair in a loose braid, toes cold from the metal grating under her feet. She watched the street below, people rushing home, horns in the distance, a couple arguing over a parking ticket 3 stories down. And all she could think about was Sterling's face when she kissed his cheek, the stillness in his eyes, like he wasn't used to tenderness, not the kind without expectation. She hadn't let many people into her space since her father's stroke. She didn't trust easily, not because of heartbreak, but because she'd been the strong one for so long. The caretaker, the planner, the fixer. Sterling didn't make her feel small. He made her feel safe. And that scared her more than anything, because safety wasn't something you leaned into without checking the ground twice. She sipped her tea and sighed. Maybe she'd never know exactly why he stayed silent all those years. But she knew one thing: he wasn't pretending with her. And in a world built on performances, that was more than enough. The next morning, Sterling sent a simple message. "Free tonight?" Kyla replied 6 minutes later. They met at a food truck downtown. He wore sneakers. She wore boots and a messy ponytail. They ordered 3 tacos each and sat on a bench behind the truck, knees brushing occasionally, hands full of grease-stained napkins. "Is this your idea of fine dining?" she asked, biting into a carnitas taco. "I've had 100 meals in a $1,000 suit that didn't taste this good." She smiled. "You ever get tired of it?" "Of suits?" "No, of being expected to always have the answer." Sterling paused, wiped his hands. "Yes," he said simply, "but it's harder to admit when the world only sees you as the solution." Kyla nodded. "I know that feeling," she said. "Except, I'm not rich." "No," he said, looking at her carefully. "You're something harder to be. You're grounded." She went quiet, then said, "My dad once told me, don't date a man who only knows how to give money. Date a man who can give peace." "And which do you think I am?" Sterling asked. "I don't know yet," she replied. "But you've been quiet around me. That's a good sign." He let out a breath of a laugh. "That's the first time someone's seen my silence as a compliment." She nudged his knee. "That's because most people don't listen through it." He looked at her, really looked. She wasn't trying to be charming. She was just present, and that was more disarming than anything he'd ever faced in a boardroom. After dinner, they walked. No destination, no pressure, just steps. At a red light, Sterling turned to her. "Can I ask something?" She looked up. "Depends on the question." He smiled faintly. "Why me?" She raised an eyebrow. "You're the one who loved me silently for 5 years. I mean, why now? Why are you giving me this chance?" Kyla took a beat, then answered, "Because you waited. Not because you were scared, but because you respected my space. And people who respect your space before they know if they'll be invited in, that's rare." Sterling's throat tightened. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear that. They reached her building. She stopped at the steps. "I won't ask you up," she said. "I wouldn't expect you to, but you can call me tomorrow. I will." She started to turn, then paused. "Sterling?" "Yeah?" "I don't know what this is yet, but I'm not running from it." He nodded once. Neither was he. The next day came with soft light and quiet promises. Sterling woke before sunrise, not out of habit, but because he'd slept better than he had in months. No dreams, no restlessness, just stillness. He sat by the window of his penthouse, a mug of coffee in hand, eyes on the city that had once felt like his playground and his prison. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel so empty up here, because her words had stayed with him. "I don't know what this is yet, but I'm not running from it." That sentence had given him something rarer than loyalty, rarer than admiration. It gave him hope. Across town, Kyla sat at her desk in the community center's after-school program office. Kids shouted down the hallway. Someone knocked over a bin of markers. Laughter exploded in the main room. But all she could hear was her own heartbeat. She wasn't used to letting people in slowly. With most men, she could tell after 1 or 2 dates if it wasn't going to work. Too pushy, too proud, too performative. But Sterling didn't perform. He listened, waited, let her draw the line. And she was starting to realize she liked the way he stood still in her life instead of barging in. Still, she wasn't blind. The man had influence, reach, power. And even if he didn't use it to control her, it was still there. A weight, something people might whisper about if they ever knew. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. What would it mean, really mean, to be connected to someone like Sterling Dane? Not in secret, not as the girl he once watched from afar, but as his equal. Could the world even make space for that? And more importantly, Could she? That evening, he called. "I have a strange idea," Sterling said. "I'm listening," Kyla replied. "There's a street market downtown. I haven't been in years, but I want to go. No entourage. Just people." She smiled into the phone. "You're serious?" "I am. You know someone's bound to recognize you. Let them." She paused. "Okay. Pick me up in 20... The market buzzed with weekend energy. Booths packed with handmade jewelry, food carts lined down the sidewalks, music from a local trio drifting in the background. Sterling walked beside her in a plain hoodie and jeans, cap low. Kyla wore sneakers and a bomber jacket, hair tucked into a loose bun. They looked normal. That was the magic of it. Sterling paid for fresh lemonade from a kid selling out of a cooler. Kyla browsed a table of second-hand books and bought 2 for $1. No one stopped them. No flashes. No security. Just space and laughter. But the night didn't end quietly. They'd nearly made it back to his car when a voice stopped them. "Mr. Dane?" Sterling stiffened. Kyla turned. A young woman, early 20s, phone in hand, face lit with curiosity. "You are Sterling Dane, right?" He gave a polite nod. "Just trying to enjoy the evening." The girl smiled. "Totally. Sorry. It's just, you're kind of a legend in the startup space." He nodded again, stepping protectively in front of Kyla. The girl glanced at her, then back at him. Her expression changed, curiosity sharpening, assumptions forming. "Cool. Well, have a good night," she said, walking off. Kyla didn't speak until they were back in the car. Sterling drove silently, eyes on the road. Only when they reached her place did she break the silence. "Is that going to be a regular thing?" He looked over at her. "Maybe. Sometimes." She nodded, then unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm not scared of your world," she said softly. "I know. But I'm also not naive to it." He met her gaze. "And I won't let it touch you." "That's not the promise I'm asking for," she said. "Then what are you asking?" Kyla's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "Promise me that you won't use the world to cushion me. I don't need shields, Sterling. I need truth." He leaned closer. "You've never been behind a shield, Kyla. You've always been the reason I stayed grounded." She studied him, then slowly smiled. "I believe you." She opened the door and stepped out. Before closing it, she looked back. "Next time, let's go somewhere even less perfect." He raised an eyebrow. "Less perfect?" "Yeah, like a laundromat." He laughed. "Deal." She shut the door. And Sterling sat there for a long minute, engine running, heart fuller than it had been in years, because her words had done more than challenge him. They'd accepted him, not for what he had, but for who he was becoming. The laundromat buzzed with the dull hum of machines and the sharp scent of detergent. Kyla tossed a basket of clothes onto the counter and glanced over her shoulder with a grin. "Still think you're too rich for a coin machine?" Sterling held up a handful of quarters and shrugged. "I come prepared." He wore a plain black t-shirt and faded jeans. No designer labels, no bodyguards. Just a man, helping a woman fold towels on a Tuesday night. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple that had been doing this for years. But this was their first time doing anything this ordinary. And that's exactly why it mattered. Kyla motioned toward a broken vending machine. "The chips get stuck in that one. Don't say I didn't warn you." Sterling gave her a sideways look. "And you still buy from it?" "I like watching people fight with it." He smirked and dropped a few quarters into a washer. They moved in quiet sync, folding shirts and sharing casual glances, a rhythm building between them that needed no words. But halfway through sorting a pile of towels, Kyla asked without looking up, "Did anyone say anything to you after that girl recognized you the other night?" Sterling hesitated, then shook his head. "My assistant flagged the photo. It didn't go viral. No major blogs picked it up." She nodded. "Good, but it might happen again," he said carefully. "I know. You sure that's something you're ready for?" Kyla folded the last towel and stacked it. Then she looked him square in the eyes. "I'm not ready," she said. But I'm not walking away either. He took that in, quietly, because he knew that kind of honesty didn't come easily for her. She didn't promise forever. She promised effort, and that meant more than anything else. 2 days later, Kyla found an envelope under her door. No return address, just her name, written in perfect, practiced handwriting. Inside was a letter. 3 lines. I know who you're dating. I know what he did for you. I wonder if everyone else should know too. No signature, no threat, but the chill in her chest didn't lie. It wasn't curiosity, it was exposure. She sat on the edge of her couch, letter shaking in her hand. She didn't know who sent it, didn't know what they thought they knew, but someone was watching, and she needed to decide what to do with that information, fast. She didn't call Sterling right away. Instead, she went to work, ran the after-school program, helped a kid with their reading, smiled through check-ins, and made it home by 7. Only then did she pull out her phone. She snapped a photo of the letter and sent it. 1 minute later, her phone rang. His voice was calm. Do you have the physical copy? Yes. Do not throw it away. I wasn't going to. I'll send someone to pick it up tonight. She closed her eyes. Sterling, I don't want this to become a thing. It already is. Silence. He added, gently, let me protect what I waited for. She didn't answer, but she didn't stop him either. Later that night, a man in a grey suit knocked on her door. Professional, quiet, respectful. She handed over the letter. He gave her a sealed envelope from Sterling in return. Inside, a note written in his handwriting. Nothing about you is hidden anymore, but everything about you is still yours. It made her chest tighten, not out of fear, but something else, relief, because for the first time, she wasn't alone in handling the fallout. The next evening, Sterling met her on her front steps. No suit, no security, just him. She didn't ask what he found. She didn't want names or speculation. All she said was, do I need to worry? And all he said was, no. But I do. She let that sit between them, then stepped aside so he could come in. They sat in the kitchen. She poured tea. He leaned on the counter, arms crossed. I've kept a lot of things out of the press, he said. But when someone decides to go digging, even the quiet truths get loud. She nodded slowly. I'm not ashamed, she said, of what you did, or who you are. He looked at her. But I want to choose when people know what's mine. I understand. I won't be a headline, Sterling. I won't be some whispered theory on a podcast or a clickbait thumbnail. You won't. She met his eyes. Then we move on my terms. He nodded once. Deal. After he left that night, Kyla sat on the edge of her bed. She didn't feel scared anymore. She felt awake, because this was no longer a maybe. This was real, and real love came with risk. She grabbed a pen, pulled out a notebook, wrote a single line. If the world's going to hear this story, let it be from me. Sterling hadn't seen her all day, not because he didn't want to, but because Kyla had asked for space. I need to think, she'd said the night before. He respected that, even if every minute felt like a silent storm building behind his ribs. He didn't send flowers, didn't check in, didn't use his security team to monitor anything. He waited, because control wasn't love, and she wasn't someone who'd ever respond to pressure. Late that evening, his phone buzzed. Kay, I'm going to tell my own story. I need your support, but not your voice. He stared at the message for a long time, then replied, say the word and I'll clear the way. Her response came seconds later. Kay, no. I want them to try me. I need to feel what it means to stand on my own. He read that twice, and the tightness in his chest eased, not because she didn't need him, but because she knew he was already behind her. The next morning, Kayla walked into the small downtown podcast studio alone. It was a community show, local voices, small business owners, real people with real stories. The host, Erica Vallon, was a woman Kayla knew loosely through a former client at the center. Erica greeted her with a surprised smile. "Didn't expect a message from you. I figured I should tell my story before someone else tries to sell it." Erica raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about Sterling Dane?" Kayla nodded. Erica leaned back. "This isn't a gossip show, Kayla." "I'm not bringing gossip," Kayla said calmly. "I'm bringing facts. My life, my timeline, my words." Erica studied her for a second, then said, "You get one take. Raw. No edits. Good." The recording lasted 38 minutes. Kayla didn't cry. She didn't dramatize. She just told the truth. The rainy night at the cafe. The man who vanished. The silent help she didn't trace for years. And how, one night at a gala, she realized the man she thought had forgotten her hadn't. "He didn't save me," she said clearly. "He never tried to own me. But he removed barriers quietly. He did what the world forgets to do for women like me. He respected the fight I was already in." She ended with this: "I'm not a Cinderella. I wasn't waiting for a prince. I was just trying to finish my shift. He remembered me. I remembered me too. That's why I'm sitting here today." When the episode aired 2 days later, the ripple came fast. Not scandal, not backlash, respect. Comments flooded the page. "This is how you tell a love story without losing yourself." She didn't sell her silence. She shared her strength. Quiet power. That's what she gave us. Sterling read every comment. He didn't reach out that day. He knew better. Kayla had done what most people in his world couldn't. She controlled the narrative without erasing its depth. And she didn't need him to stand next to her to prove it. "Did you listen?" she asked. "I did." "Any regrets?" "Just one, which is that I waited this long." She exhaled on the other end. "I want to see you. I'm already outside." She opened the door a minute later. Sterling stood there in the quiet, hands in his jacket pockets. He didn't speak. He just stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. Not because she was broken, not because she needed holding, but because she deserved to feel safe in someone else's arms for once. Kayla rested her head against his chest. "You know, I thought telling the world would scare me. And now I feel free." He kissed her hair and whispered, "You always were." Inside her apartment, they sat on the couch, legs tangled, her head on his shoulder. No noise, no plans, just quiet. "You gave me a story no one else could," she murmured. Sterling brushed her hand gently. "I only gave you a chance. You wrote the rest." Across the city, headlines began to shift. Not scandal, not clickbait, just truth. And somewhere between all the noise, 2 people had found peace in the silence. The first time Kayla stepped into Sterling's private residence, it didn't feel like a palace. It felt quiet, not cold, not sterile, just quiet. Muted walls, tall windows, a living room that looked like no one ever used it, but everything had its place. She stood at the edge of the foyer and whispered, "So this is where you disappear." Sterling watched her from behind, keys still in hand. More like, "Where I go to breathe." She looked around again. It wasn't what she expected from a billionaire. No gold, no absurd statues, no sprawling portraits of himself. Instead, there were bookshelves, framed black and white photos, a record player in the corner, a chessboard halfway through a game no one had finished. Kayla turned slowly. "You live like you're hiding." He met her gaze. "I was, until you showed up." She didn't say anything at first. Then, she reached for the hair tie on her wrist, pulled her hair into a bun, and kicked off her shoes. "Then let's not pretend tonight," she said, and she walked in like she belonged. They spent the first hour on the balcony. Sterling poured her a glass of wine, poured himself a weaker one, and brought out a throw blanket for her legs. When the air shifted, she sat curled into the couch, the skyline glittering behind her, streetlights stretching across the city like stars with ambition. "This place is beautiful," she said, "but it's not loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It's the only place that doesn't need anything from me." She looked at him over the rim of her glass. "And now you're sharing it?" Sterling gave a quiet nod. That was always the plan. Kyla set her drink down. You've lived like this for years. Why me? He didn't blink. Because you never asked for more than I was willing to give. And still, I wanted to give you everything. Later, he showed her the room he never opened for guests. A private studio. No press photos had ever shown it. No one outside his most trusted staff even knew it existed. Inside were sketches, blueprints, rough drafts, ideas he never shared. Not for buildings. For programs, for clinics, for low-income housing projects he hadn't yet pitched. "You're designing housing?" she asked, flipping through a folder. He leaned on the edge of the table, arms folded. In places most people don't want to invest in. Why? Because it matters. And because money that doesn't make someone's life easier isn't worth calling wealth. Kyla looked up at him. "You know that sounds nothing like the man they describe in magazines, right?" "I know. And you're okay with that?" "I wasn't," he admitted. "But I am now." She kept flipping through the files. Then she stopped at one. It was labeled Project Win. Her breath caught. She looked at him sharply. "You named something after me." He didn't smile. He just said, "It's a pilot program for transitional housing, for women leaving shelters with kids." She closed the folder slowly. "You don't even know if this will pass approvals." "I don't need approvals. I only need permission to start." She stared at him, not because she didn't believe it, but because she did, completely, and that scared her more than anything. They ended the night in the kitchen. Kyla barefoot in one of his shirts making grilled cheese. Sterling leaning against the fridge, watching her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. "You know," she said, flipping a sandwich, "if someone told me 2 months ago that I'd be doing this in a billionaire's kitchen, I would have laughed. Then I would have had to show up and change your mind." She glanced at him over her shoulder. "You would have never had the guts. 5 years ago, no. Now?" He walked over, stood behind her, wrapped his arms gently around her waist, and kissed her shoulder. "Now I'd knock," he whispered, "but I wouldn't leave if you didn't open the door." She melted slightly into him, and the grilled cheese burned. Neither of them noticed. But peace never lasts long when money is involved, and by the next morning, someone else had noticed the shift in Sterling's life. Not a stranger, not a journalist, but someone inside, someone close. And they didn't like that Kayla Wynne was suddenly more than just a footnote in his story. Sterling had an early meeting at headquarters the next morning. Kyla stayed behind in his penthouse, curled on the couch with a cup of coffee and one of the books from his shelf, a worn hardcover with his name handwritten inside the front flap. She liked how the place felt without him there. Not empty, not abandoned, just trusting, like he didn't need to hover, like she was welcome even in his absence. But that peace lasted until 10:17 a.m. That's when the elevator dinged. She looked up from the couch, slightly startled. She hadn't ordered anything, and no one else had the code. Except whoever just used it. The doors slid open. A woman stepped out. Early 40s, elegant, polished, no smile, a tight chignon, a charcoal pantsuit, a face Kyla recognized from a Forbes cover. Delaney Knorr, Sterling's lead legal strategist, and rumored to be the only person he ever allowed to shut down a boardroom without his approval. Kyla stood up slowly. Delaney scanned the room, then looked directly at her. "You're Kyla Wynne." It wasn't a question. Kyla straightened her posture. "I am." Delaney walked in without permission, set her bag on the marble counter, glanced at the book Kyla had been reading. "Interesting choice," she said, like she was already assessing character. Kyla didn't flinch. It was on his shelf. Delaney didn't sit. She stayed standing, a deliberate move. "You've had quite the few weeks," she said. "Podcast, photos, public interest." Kyla didn't respond. Delaney opened her bag, pulled out a slim folder. "Sterling asked me to update you on what visibility might mean for you. Legally, financially, reputationally." Kyla's eyes narrowed. "I didn't ask for a briefing. No, but you need one. Kyla walked over slowly, took the folder, didn't open it. Delaney continued, You should know that the firm has already received inquiries, background checks, speaking requests, sponsorship offers. For what? For being the woman who caught Sterling Dane's attention. Kyla's stomach turned. Delaney's voice stayed calm, detached, clinical. I've worked with Sterling for 11 years. I've seen distractions come and go. You seem different, but that doesn't mean the machine stops moving. You've stepped into his orbit. That has consequences. Kyla folded her arms. And are you here as a friend or a warning? Delaney finally looked her dead in the eye. As a mirror. She picked up her bag. If you care about him, and I believe you do, then know this, it's not just about you anymore. Kyla walked her to the elevator. No small talk. Before the doors closed, Delaney added one last line. And if you think love alone is enough to survive this world, you're wrong. The elevator closed. Kyla stood there. Still, silent. Then she dropped the unopened folder on the kitchen table and went to wash her hands. Not because they were dirty, but because she felt the kind of pressure she hadn't in years. Not since her father's first collapse. Not since the scholarship almost fell through. But this was different. This wasn't survival. This was intrusion. That night, Sterling returned around 7. He looked tired, loosened tie, sleeves rolled up, top button undone. Kyla met him at the door. I met Delaney. He stilled, then quietly closed the door behind him. I didn't send her to intimidate you. She didn't need to be sent. Sterling stepped closer. I told her to bring you the reality, not to challenge your place here. Kyla's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Are you protecting me, or preparing to let me get picked apart? He looked at her carefully. I'm doing both, because this life doesn't give you options. It gives you fallout, and I'd rather you see it coming than get blindsided. She crossed her arms. Then here's what I need from you, Sterling. I don't want handlers. I don't want folders. I want a choice. You have it. Do the first. His silence was the answer she feared. Kyla nodded slowly, then turned, walked to the window, and stared out at the skyline he'd built. He joined her after a moment. Delaney protects the company, he said softly, but I protect you. Don't confuse the two. She looked at him. I'm not confusing anything. I'm just making it clear. If I'm going to stay, it's not going to be in someone else's blueprint. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. I didn't fall for the empire, Sterling, she whispered. I fell for the man who waited 5 years to speak. I'm still him. Then don't let the world replace him. They stood there for a long time. No headlines, no signatures. Just two people holding hands in a city that had already started talking. If you've ever had to protect your peace while falling in love, or stood your ground, when power tried to speak for you, like, comment, and subscribe to Mr. Charles' stories. Because real strength doesn't come from standing behind someone. It comes from standing beside them. Sterling didn't schedule any meetings the next morning. He sat at his office desk, phone face down, laptop closed, coffee untouched. What kept circling his mind wasn't a pitch or a profit forecast. It was her words. I didn't fall for the empire. I fell for the man who waited 5 years to speak. He'd built towers, companies, reputations. But this was different. This was about trust. Not the kind that came from NDAs or polished contracts. The kind you earned by staying present when it would have been easier to disappear. And he wasn't going to lose it. Across town, Kayla sat at her kitchen table, reading through the folder Delaney had left behind. She hadn't meant to open it. But curiosity and caution had teamed up around midnight and gotten the best of her. There were photos, paparazzi candids of her at the market with Sterling. On the park bench, walking out of a building he owned. Below the photos were analysis breakdowns, projection reports, headlines that hadn't been written yet, but could be. One caught her eye. From waitress to billionaire's muse, who is Kyla Wynne? She stared at the mock title for a long time. Muse, like she didn't have her own voice, like she existed only to fuel someone else's rise. She closed the folder. Not with fear, with fire. That afternoon, she returned to the community center earlier than usual. She pulled her manager aside and asked if she could start developing a new program. Women transitioning from emergency shelters into stability, Kyla explained. But I want to partner with clinics, employment offices, safe housing organizations. Her manager blinked. That's a big ask. Kyla's voice stayed calm. It's a bigger need. He looked at her. Is this connected to your relationship? Yes, but it's not a handout, it's a platform. And I'm building it myself. After a pause, he smiled. Then let's get started. Sterling found out 3 hours later, not from her, but from an anonymous board update flagged in his email. Project Win, independent pilot, initiated by Quinn, pending non-profit status review. He sat back, stunned. She hadn't asked. She hadn't waited. She was already moving. He showed up at the center that evening. No appointment. Just walked in, signed the visitor log, and waited by the hallway wall while she finished a group session. When Kayla saw him, she gave a half smile and gestured for 5 more minutes. Sterling waited. When she joined him, she said nothing right away. He held up his phone with the notification still on screen. Project Win? Kyla nodded. I had the name first. He laughed once, softly. That's fair. I'm not taking your blueprint. I'm building my own. You don't owe me a disclaimer. I'm not giving one, she said. I'm giving you a warning. I'm stepping in. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not a wide grin. Not approval. Something deeper. Respect. I hoped you would. They left the building together. Outside, the air was warm. The city hadn't slowed yet, but the sidewalk near the center was quieter. Kyla looked up at him. I'm not going to disappear when things get louder. Sterling met her gaze. Then I need to start making sure my world doesn't try to mute you. I won't let it, she replied. That's what I'm afraid of, he said with a quiet smile. She nudged his shoulder. Don't be. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm here to build something, with or without approval. Sterling nodded, then reached for her hand. She let him take it. No cameras, no headlines, just 2 people walking toward whatever was next, together. The next board meeting started like all the others. Sharp suits, straight faces, laptops open, espresso in hand, 12 chairs, 11 people. Sterling knew better than some of his own family. But this meeting had a shadow in the room. Not because of Kyla, because of who hadn't spoken yet. Leighton Vaughn, senior partner, 40% shareholder. One of the original 4 who helped Sterling take his tech vision from napkin sketch to a billion-dollar empire. He'd been quiet during the reports, quiet during the projections. But when Sterling closed his laptop and said, meeting adjourned, Leighton didn't move. Instead, he cleared his throat. I have something. Sterling paused, then looked up. Go ahead. Leighton folded his hands. It's about perception. The room shifted. Subtle, uneasy. Sterling stayed seated. You'll have to be more specific. You've spent years building this company's image, private, sharp, untouchable. The Kyla Wynn coverage. It shifts that. Sterling's jaw tensed. She hasn't asked for attention. She doesn't have to, Leighton replied. Attention follows you, and now it follows her, which means it follows us. Another partner jumped in. We've had more inbound press than usual. Investors are asking if your focus is split. Sterling looked around the table. So, because I'm finally seen in public with a woman, suddenly my performance is questionable. We're not questioning your performance, Leighton said. We're questioning the optics. Sterling stood slowly. Let me say this once. Kayla didn't ask for this. She never cashed in, never spoke out for attention. She defended her privacy better than I did. Leighton's voice didn't rise. She also walked into the public arena the moment she gave that interview, and the moment she named the housing project after herself. Sterling's eyes narrowed. I named it after her. 5 years ago. Before you even knew she existed. Silence. Tension buzzed. Then Leighton shrugged. "We're not saying pull away. We're saying protect the company, limit visibility, control the narrative before someone else does." Sterling stared at him for a long moment. Then he said, calm but cold, "Kyla is not a disruption. She's a decision I've already made." He grabbed his laptop. "And if any of you think a woman with her own voice is bad for business, you're welcome to leave this table before the next quarter." And he walked out. That evening, Kyla met him at his place. She knew something had shifted the moment he kissed her without a word. Not desperate, not aggressive, but long, tired, honest. They stood like that by the door, hands locked at the waist, forehead to forehead. "Bad day?" she asked. "Loud day," he murmured. She leaned back to study his face. "You want to talk about it?" He nodded, but not yet. Later, after dinner, they sat across from each other. No music, no screens, just silence. "I was warned," he said, "that you'd be bad for image." Kyla didn't react. "Because I won't blend. Because you make me visible." He watched her face. But Kyla didn't flinch. She reached for her tea, took a sip, then replied, "I'm not here to decorate your brand. I know, and I won't shrink to keep you powerful." Sterling reached across the table and took her hand. "You're not the one shrinking, Kyla." She looked at him, eyes steady. "Then don't let them make you." Outside the window, the city pulsed like always. But inside, Sterling knew this. Power wasn't about how many people followed his decisions. It was about whether he could follow through on the ones that mattered most. And Kyla win? She wasn't just a decision. She was the only one that ever made the silence worth breaking. The car ride out of the city was silent, but not tense. Sterling drove. One hand on the wheel, the other resting between them, open. Kyla's fingers laced through his halfway through the first hour. No press, no schedule, no driver. He'd borrowed a friend's lake house. No signal, no headlines, no signals from the outside world. Kyla had packed a small duffel bag, tossed in her most worn sweater, and didn't ask for an itinerary. "Where are we going again?" she asked, as they passed the second winding road, lined with pine. "Where no one knows us," Sterling replied. She looked out the window and smiled. "That's starting to feel impossible." The lake house sat at the edge of a quiet cove, modest in appearance but beautiful. In design, stone steps, wide wooden decks, soft lights hidden in the trim. Inside, everything smelled like cedar and calm. Kyla stepped through the front door and let out a long, slow breath. "It's not cold," she murmured. "I thought it'd be cold. I turned the heat on 2 hours before we got here," Sterling said, setting down their bags. "You think of everything." "No," he said. "Just the things that matter." Dinner was simple. Pasta, garlic bread, 2 glasses of wine. They ate barefoot, seated on floor cushions instead of chairs. No distractions, no notifications. Afterward, they sat on the couch with a blanket over their legs, a single candle flickering between them. Kyla leaned her head on his shoulder. He looked down at her. "You always get quiet when we're far from the city." "I think it's the silence. It doesn't demand anything." He nodded. "That's what I want more of. Less noise, more you." She lifted her eyes. "Is that why you brought me here?" "Partly, but mostly, I needed to be somewhere we don't have to defend what we already know is real." She didn't respond. Not right away, but her hand found his again. And she whispered, "Thank you." They stayed curled up like that until the candle burned low. He carried her to bed, not because she asked, but because he wanted to. She didn't protest, and in the dark, under soft cotton sheets and the scent of fresh wood, they didn't talk about business or boardrooms or press. They just lay there, breathing in time. 2 hearts, same rhythm, no urgency, only room to be. And that night, as her fingers slid beneath his shirt and her lips met his jawline, slow, sure, safe, Sterling knew something unshakable had settled in his chest. She wasn't just the woman he'd waited for. She was the one he was ready to build toward. The morning came with no alarm, only the sound of water lapping gently against the shore below the deck. Kyla woke first, She lay still for a moment, watching the sunlight creep across the floorboards, listening to the subtle sound of Sterling's breath behind her. His arm was draped over her waist, loose, steady, like he didn't want to hold her tightly, just be near. She turned gently, facing him. He was already awake. "I was hoping you'd open your eyes first," he said. She smiled sleepily. "Why?" "So I wouldn't miss that look on your face." "What look?" "The one that doesn't belong to the rest of the world." She pressed her forehead to his chest. "I could stay here. I'd let you. But that's not how life works," she added. "No," he murmured. "But maybe it should more often." They stayed there a while longer. No rush, no talking about what came next, until Kayla whispered, "Do you ever think about what it would look like, really look like, for me to stay in your world?" Sterling's hand moved slowly along her spine. "Every day, but not just as the woman you're seeing." He pulled back slightly so she could see his eyes. "You mean as the woman I'd be building with?" "Yes." He didn't blink. "Yes," he repeated. "That's exactly what I think about." She nodded slowly. "Because it's not about press releases or who says what," she continued. "It's about whether you'd still see me the same way when the noise gets louder." "I don't need to picture it," he said. "We're already living it. And if I wanted to be more involved," his brows lifted slightly, "more in the work, the foundation, the projects. You're not just welcome," he said. "You'd be the first voice I listen to." She studied him, not because she didn't believe it, but because it felt too rare to hear it said plainly. "I've never been in a relationship where I was seen for more than what I give," she admitted. Sterling traced her cheek. "That's because most people don't know how to hold a woman who stands on her own. And you do. I've been learning from you since the moment you handed me that umbrella." She laughed softly. "I didn't think you remembered that detail." "I remember everything about that night," he said, "especially the moment you left without needing anything from me." Kyla closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. "I want to start something real, Sterling, not just with us. With what matters to us." "You already did," he said. "Project Win, then let's expand it. Formally, jointly. I want my name beside yours, not because we're together, but because we believe in the same things." He nodded. "I'll have the papers drawn up this week." "No lawyers," she said. "Not first, just us." He smiled. "Deal." They got out of bed just after noon. Kayla cooked eggs while Sterling sliced fruit. They moved like a couple who'd done this for years, but every moment still felt new, clean, earned. After breakfast, they sat on the deck, legs tangled, sun warming their skin. She looked over at him and asked one last question. "Do you think they'll ever see us without questioning how it started?" Sterling looked back at her. "I don't care if they don't. I only care that we finish it right." Kayla nodded. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she was walking into someone else's life. She was finally building her own, with someone who'd waited long enough to know the value of doing it right. The press didn't wait. As soon as Project Win was officially filed for joint non-profit status, under both their names, the headlines followed like moths to light. Sterling Dane's quiet love becomes public legacy. Who is Kayla Win, and why does she matter so much to one of the richest men in America? The waitress turned founder reshaping his billion-dollar empire. Kayla read the titles with a calm face, but her fingers tightened slightly on the mug in her hands. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. Because this wasn't about legacy. It wasn't about becoming someone. It was about building something that lasted for people who'd never be headlines. She set her phone down and walked into the shared office space where she and Sterling had begun mapping out the pilot rollout for the housing initiative. Sterling looked up, laptop open, sleeves rolled up. "You okay?" he asked. "They're loud," she said. "But they're not inside." She walked over to the whiteboard, picked up a marker. "I say we launch with 3 cities. 1 East, 1 Midwest, 1 West Coast. Different demographics, different community partners." Sterling nodded. "Denver, Richmond, San Diego?" Kayla smiled. "Look at you, understanding geography and politics." "I have my moments." They kept working. Quiet, efficient, collaborative. She was good at this. He knew it. Everyone in his circle knew it, which was exactly why the pressure started mounting. A week later, the non-profit's public introduction was scheduled. 1 press event, 1 live panel discussion, and a private donor dinner. Kyla insisted they share the stage equally at the event. No hand-holding. No couple spotlight, she said. We go as partners. Done, Sterling said. And I wear what I want. He raised an eyebrow. Was I ever going to stop you? She grinned. No, but I like hearing it. The event was held at an upscale community gallery in Soho. Walls filled with portraits of women who had once lived through housing insecurity and gone on to rebuild their lives. Kayla walked in ahead of Sterling. No handlers. No flash. She wore a sleeveless black jumpsuit, low heels, no jewelry except the slim gold ring she always wore on her right hand. Sterling watched from a few steps behind as she greeted community leaders with a firm handshake and a level gaze. He didn't step in. She didn't need him to, and for once, the cameras didn't rush to him first. They paused, then tilted toward her, as if the story had finally shifted, as if the world realized she wasn't the afterthought. She was the start. Later that night, after the crowd cleared, they sat alone in the green room. She leaned her head against the couch cushion. That went better than I expected. You looked like you've been doing this your whole life. I was, she said. Just no one was watching. Sterling reached for her hand. Now they are. Kyla turned to him. And I'm not hiding, but I'm not letting them shape me either. You won't need to, he said, because the only story they'll keep finding is truth. Her eyes softened, and in that moment, the project stopped being a press-worthy milestone. It became theirs, not because the cameras cared, but because they still did, even after the lights went out. The first message came through Kyla's email, not her work one, her personal account, the one she hadn't used much since college. Subject line, so now you care about housing? She opened it without hesitation. There was no name, but she didn't need one. The writing style, the passive-aggressive tone, the way the sarcasm hid an old wound. It was from Jenilyn, an ex-friend, dormant turned critic, someone who once helped Kayla carry her books to class, and later called her self-righteous for not going along with certain circles. They hadn't spoken in 4 years. The message was short. Funny how you used to say no one sees us. Now you're the face of the cause. Don't worry, I won't go public. But don't act like you weren't trying to get out long before you cared about anyone else. Kayla read the message once, then again, then closed her laptop. She wasn't shaken, but something inside her, old shame maybe, stirred, not because it was true, but because once upon a time she had wanted out of the noise, out of the paycheck-to-paycheck panic, out of the part of her life that made her feel invisible. But leaving didn't mean forgetting, and helping now didn't erase where she came from. She sat in silence for a moment, then picked up her phone. Sterling answered immediately. I need to ask you something, she said. Anything. If I ever have to defend who I used to be, will you stay back and let me handle it? He didn't rush his answer. Yes, he said. If that's what you need. She nodded into the silence. Good. Because someone's trying to pull that thread. He exhaled. From where? Past life. Public? Not yet. But it's bruising enough to sting. He paused. What do you want to do? I want to keep building. I want to keep showing up. But I also want to know if this foundation can handle pressure. It can. Not just from your side, she clarified. He understood then. She wasn't asking for backup. She was asking for respect. Kyla, he said quietly, your voice built the base, not my name. No one gets to erase that. Not even the past. She smiled faintly. Good answer. The next morning, Kyla drafted a public post. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't reactive. It was a letter. A message to anyone who thought rising meant forgetting. I didn't start here, she wrote, but I never left what made me. For every person watching, waiting to see if I fold under pressure, I won't. I was forged in it. And now, I build through it. She posted it, walked out of her apartment, and went straight to the center. No makeup, no assistant, just herself. Because visibility meant nothing if she wasn't willing to be seen fully. Sterling saw the post while walking into a shareholder briefing. He stopped in the hallway. Read it. Twice. Then turned around. His assistant blinked. Mr. Dane, the briefing. Reschedule it. But he didn't stop. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is show up silently for a woman who never needed saving, only space. Kayla stepped out of the building later that day to find Sterling waiting by the car. No driver, just him. She raised an eyebrow. "You're missing a meeting." "No," he said. "I'm standing beside a partner." She stared at him for a beat, then got in the car, not because she needed a ride, but because sometimes standing side by side didn't require a statement. It only required a presence that didn't flinch when old shadows showed up. The building stood taller than most in Lower Manhattan, not because of its height, there were taller ones, but because of its meaning. Inside sat one of the city's most influential real estate boards. Kayla had never stepped foot in it, not as a guest, not as a consultant, not even as a curious intern. Now she was walking into it with a name badge, an appointment, and a voice that carried more weight than her resume ever had. Project Win had caught their attention. More importantly, it had caught the attention of the wrong people who could no longer ignore her. Sterling wasn't with her this time. She asked him not to come. "This one has to be mine," she told him. He'd only nodded and said, "Don't hold back." The panel inside was stiff at first. 4 members, 2 developers, 1 city liaison, 1 skeptical philanthropist who looked at her bio like it was a dare. They asked hard questions. Where will the money come from in year 5? Who will maintain ownership after 5 years? Are you willing to give up equity to bring it city-wide? Kayla answered all of them, not defensively, but clearly, with facts, with patience, with the calm of someone who didn't walk in for applause. She walked in for opportunity. Halfway through, one of the developers said, "You don't have legacy backing, no institutional investors. You're building this on public trust." "That's risky." Kayla nodded once. Everything worth rebuilding started with public trust. This city was built on sweat before it was bought with money. A pause. Then the liaison said, "You're young. I'm informed. You're attached to a high-profile relationship. It could skew support." Kayla didn't blink. "I built before him. I'll build with or without him. But having someone stand beside me doesn't make me weaker. It makes me unafraid." There was silence. A kind of silence that meant someone in the room had been proved wrong, quietly and without theatrics. After the panel ended, Kayla stepped out onto the terrace overlooking the skyline. She didn't need a view, but today she earned it. Her phone buzzed. "Sterling, you out?" "Kayla, yes." "Sterling, want the update on the contract?" "Kayla, later. Tell me something better. Something that has nothing to do with money." 5 dots appeared, then stopped, then reappeared. He was thinking. Then came the message. "Sterling, you left your lip balm in my drawer." "I didn't throw it out." She smiled. Back at the Dane Group headquarters, Sterling stood at the edge of the 24th floor conference room. Papers were spread out in front of him. Not business deals, not merger documents, blueprints. He had quietly begun developing a prototype expansion idea Kayla once floated months ago. A multi-tiered housing system with a public-private revenue-sharing model. He hadn't told her yet. Not until the foundation was stronger. But as he looked at the sketches, he realized something. She wasn't the one who needed proving anymore. He was. Because for once, Sterling Dane wasn't chasing legacy for his name. He was trying to build something that would outlast him, even if it wasn't under his spotlight. Later that night, Kayla sat in her apartment with her legs tucked under her, a cup of tea in hand and a notebook open. The call from the board had come. Conditional approval, public review phase next, and one critical clause: They wanted her to partner with a corporate development firm to scale it. One of 3 listed firms. She scanned the names. One of them had Sterling Dane's signature on multiple former projects. She closed the file. The challenge wasn't about choosing him. It was about what came next. Because if she did, the headlines would turn. They'd say she didn't get it on merit. They'd say she needed him. Even if she didn't. Even if she'd earned every inch of the offer. Would it be smarter to choose a stranger to preserve the optics? Or trust that those who mattered would know the truth? Her phone buzzed again. Sterling, meeting with Landron board, moved to 11 tomorrow. But I'll reschedule if you need backup. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she wrote something down in her notebook. Visibility can't replace validity, but the right partnership doesn't erase strength, it multiplies it. Across the city, Sterling looked at the last page of the proposal package. His team had added something, a clause, one that stated he would recuse himself from public credit and ownership if Kayla chose Dane Group to help scale. He hadn't approved it yet, but now he realized why they added it. They saw what he hadn't voiced. This wasn't his stage, and it wasn't his story, but it could be his contribution. He picked up the pen, signed his name under the clause. No ownership, no credit, just presence. Because sometimes the loudest power is stepping back so someone else's voice can be heard without a shadow. The headline hit by noon. Not a whisper, not a leak. A deliberate, full-page spread in Manhattan Ledger. Dane's lover tapped for $28 million city project. Conflict or coincidence? Kayla saw it on a cab's digital screen before her assistant could even warn her. The article used old photos, pictures from weeks back. Her laughing beside Sterling, his hand on her back, a glass raised in toast. But the captions were new, the agenda was sharp, and the comments beneath the online version were worse. Must be nice to get city funding because you dated right. She's just a pretty face with the right boyfriend. This is why public money gets wasted. It's a scam. Kayla didn't cry, but she didn't blink for a while. She stood in the bathroom stall of a cafe 3 blocks from her meeting and let the silence stretch. Not because she was scared, because she was tired. She'd answered every question. She'd passed every gate. But one picture with the wrong angle could destroy the truth of her journey. At Dane Group, Sterling read the article from his office. The room was quiet, too quiet. His jaw locked once, then again. He didn't call her, didn't text. Instead, he sent an encrypted legal note to the firm that ran the paper. Public defamation through implication. Facts omitted. Statement of intent to pursue correction. Then he cancelled his next 3 meetings and called his mother. Because this exact type of attack was something she had lived through once. She answered on the 2nd ring. Yes? It's happening to her. What did they say? He told her, word for word. Silence. Then his mother said, don't defend her in public, stand beside her in private. Let her choose how she wants to fight. Then make sure she has the space to win. Sterling didn't speak again, but he understood. This wasn't his battle. It was hers. Kayla made it to her next meeting, media fire and all. The board already had the article printed out when she walked in. No one spoke, so she did. I saw the article. I won't justify a relationship, but I will defend the integrity of the work. The older man from the last meeting, the skeptic, tapped the paper. This kind of headline could derail public support. And you know that... Kayla stepped forward. Let it. He looked up. She didn't flinch. I'll step down from the contract if it means the project survives, but I won't accept silence as strategy anymore. If you want my work, take it with the truth of how I built it. Or find someone else. Another pause. Then the city liaison cleared her throat. We don't want to replace you. We want to help you weather this. Kayla's voice steadied. Then stop asking me to pretend I got lucky. Start asking why men can have success and relationships without public doubt. But women have to pick one. A ripple ran across the room. No one interrupted, because truth, even hard truth, had weight. and Kyla had just dropped it. That night, Sterling found her sitting on the floor of her apartment. No wine, no music, just the blue glow of her laptop and an open email draft. He walked in slowly, not saying a word. She didn't look up. They're going to run another piece tomorrow. A counter-op. Sterling sat beside her, resting his back against the couch. Yours. She nodded. I'm not going to defend my love life. I'm going to publish the proposal. Full, open source. Let the public see the math, the research, the plan. Let them know I didn't sleep my way to impact. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He didn't say, you shouldn't have to. He just said, do you want me to proofread it? She looked at him then. I want you to stay in the background. Quietly. I'm good at that now, he said. A smile touched her lips. I know. The article dropped at 6 a.m. the next morning. Title, the math, the model, the mission, not the man. Kyla's voice rang throughout. Direct quotes, screenshots, data tables, her graduation thesis, her early pilot project numbers. By noon, the article had been shared over 100,000 times. The comments changed. She's the one we want building this. I don't care who she dates. That model is better than anything the city's had in years. This woman needs the microphone, not judgment. A new wave rose. Public support grew louder than the doubt. Even competing developers reposted her piece with comments like, the city should be lucky to have her mind behind this. And when the city board reconvened later that week, it was no longer a meeting to reconsider her. It was a vote to secure her. Sterling watched from his office. He never sent a single public word, but he posted her article link on the company's internal board. With one note, this is what leadership looks like. No name, no extra tags, just quiet recognition. Kyla never replied, but she saw it, and that was enough. 1 week later, the project was greenlit. A revised clause was added. Public ownership would stay at 62%. Kyla would hold 23% as founder. The final 15% would be distributed over 10 years to participants of the pilot housing zones she originally developed. It was her idea, because power meant nothing if it didn't empower others. In a city where buildings touched clouds and names fought to stay remembered, Kyla had built something better, a model that wouldn't need her face, just her blueprint. And when she stood on the platform to accept the city's acknowledgement, she didn't mention the media storm. She didn't reference Sterling. She simply said, impact should never need permission, then walked off the stage with her head high. Legacy was never the goal, but she'd earned it anyway. The city moved forward, and Kyla didn't chase it. She watched from a quiet corner of the very community her blueprint helped shape, Unit 11B, Eastline Housing. A modest complex once dismissed by developers, now the city's pilot zone for sustainable, dignified urban living. Glass-paneled community kitchens, solar-lit sidewalks, childcare floors built into each building, local-run stores replacing convenience chains. No one needed to know she helped design it. That was the point. Her name had been scrubbed from the brochure. By her own request, the initiative now stood under its project name alone, Project Relume. Light, without spotlight. Kyla had stepped back, not because she was defeated, but because she'd already won the only way that mattered. The first family moved into their new apartment on a rainy Thursday morning. A single mom with twin boys. She didn't recognize Kyla in the lobby, just offered a tired smile and said, I heard this place doesn't leak when it rains. That true? Kyla smiled softly. Yeah, it's true. The woman exhaled like she hadn't in months. That exhale was the reward, not the awards, not the panels, not the magazine covers, not the silent nods of approval from rooms full of men who once questioned her. Kyla taught 2 workshops a week now, free, one on urban infrastructure for single mothers trying to learn budgeting and planning, one on sustainable housing for high school girls interested in civil engineering. She never introduced herself with a title, just Kyla, No last name, no affiliations. If they knew, they never mentioned it. The girls came with notebooks full of questions. Half of them had never imagined a world where someone like them could design cities. Kyla made sure they saw every possible version of that world. Sterling visited once, not publicly. He pulled up in an unmarked car and didn't wear a suit. No driver, no security, just him. She was walking out of the East Line building with an armful of curriculum folders when she saw him waiting by the side lot. He didn't wave. She didn't run. They stood in silence for a few seconds. Then he said, "You built it?" She nodded. "I saw the transfer clause," he added. "You gave up your stake. I distributed it to people you'll never meet. That's how you outlive your name." His jaw clenched. "You always planned to disappear." "No," she said. "I planned to matter without being owned." Sterling didn't ask for a second chance. Kyla didn't offer one. They'd loved each other once, deeply. But not all love belonged in the next chapter. Some love just marked the page. That day, he handed her a single envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. 5 words, no signature, no return address. It read, "The city owes you peace." She never saw him again, but the peace stayed. And the city? The city learned, slowly, unevenly, loudly, quietly, but it learned. By the second year, Project Relume expanded to 2 more boroughs. By year 3, universities used her open-source proposal as curriculum. By year 5, Kayla's workshop curriculum became part of the public high school elective catalogue. And by year 7, one of the girls she taught, Milani Reed, received a city grant to build her own affordable neighborhood innovation lab. Milani never called her mentor Kyla. She called her blueprint, not for what she said, but for what she left behind. By year 10, Kayla lived quietly in a small brownstone off Lexington Avenue. Still no press, still no podcast interviews, still no corporate board seats. But across the street, a little boy walked out of a school named Relume Elementary. She watched from her window and smiled. One of the teachers walked past the school sign and nodded toward the old woman in the window. "She's the reason this block has clean air and streetlights." The boy blinked. "What's her name?" The teacher paused. "Doesn't matter." The boy frowned. "Why not?" "Because the story isn't hers anymore," the teacher said. "She gave it to us." And that, more than any ceremony, more than any magazine spread or policy title, was how Kyla won. Not by fighting louder, not by proving harder, but by building something that couldn't be undone. Even if her name faded from memory, the lives touched by her work never would. Quiet justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it stood in silence and let the world catch up. Kyla sat by her window, watching the morning unfold. No headlines, no noise, only the city she'd once dreamed of, quietly becoming the city she helped build. And that was enough. Years passed. The world moved faster, but Kyla moved slower, intentionally, not out of fatigue. The kind of slowness earned. Each morning she walked the same path, past the new daycare with solar panels, through the market street, where once abandoned lots had become co-ops, and into the learning center where girls like Milani now ran programs of their own. Her name was nowhere on the walls, but her fingerprints lived in the blueprint of every project. They didn't worship her. They didn't call her savior. They just respected the silence that built their foundation. One afternoon, a former reporter showed up at the East Line workshop with a film crew. He had found a connection between her name and the original Project Relume designs. He called her a ghost architect of one of the city's most transformational models. She refused the interview. She didn't need the record set straight. The record was already alive, in safer schools, wider sidewalks, and parents who didn't have to choose between paying rent and buying milk. When the city tried to name a new development after her, Kyla sent a 2-sentence letter. Names fade. Work remains. Name it after the first woman to move in. They did. Her legacy didn't wear her name. It wore dignity, the same kind she rebuilt from ruins. The same kind no one could strip from her again. One rainy evening, Melanie came to visit. Now in her early 30s, she was pregnant with her second child and had just signed a new project deal that would bring dignified housing to a city on the other side of the country. They sat on Kayla's small porch, sipping peppermint tea. Melanie looked out over the block. "They still don't know it was you." "They don't need to," Kayla replied. "You're not bitter?" "No," she said. "I'm relieved." Melanie studied her mentor's calm expression. "You still miss him?" Kayla didn't answer right away. "Some people leave us before they leave," she said. "But their lessons stay." She didn't say Sterling's name. She didn't need to. Their story had already served its purpose. He had taught her what love without dignity looked like, and she had answered with what power built on silence could do. Melanie asked, "Do you want to be remembered?" Kayla smiled. "I want the girls I taught to teach someone else," she said. "That's enough remembrance for me." At night, Kayla lit a single lamp on her window ledge. Not because she needed the light, but because someone else might be walking through their own quiet storm, and if they looked up, they'd know someone else had been through it. Someone else had built through it. Someone else had survived it. One day, the city published an anonymous letter in a local magazine, titled, "The Woman Who Walked Away and Left Everything Standing." No photo, no byline, no author revealed. But the last paragraph read, "She didn't vanish. She multiplied. In every blueprint signed without apology, in every girl who refuses to shrink in boardrooms, in every block where the lights finally stay on after midnight." She wasn't a headline. She was the reason headlines were no longer needed. Years later, at a quiet ceremony held by the Eastline Education Fund, a group of students presented a memorial garden. It wasn't for her. It was for the women who shaped cities without ever needing to be crowned. Still, a small plaque sat at the edge of the garden, hidden under an olive tree. It read, "To the one who taught us, dignity does not need to shout. It only needs to last." That was her legacy. Not the past she survived, but the future she made possible. For others, without noise, without revenge, without needing to be named, just remembered, quietly, in every safe street, warm roof, and unshakable girl. That was how Kayla Merrin won. Silently, fully, forever. She wasn't the joke. She was the one they'd remember. If you've ever waited for someone to see your worth, if you've ever loved quietly, hoping one day they'd notice what was always there, or if you've ever had a moment where the truth, finally spoken, freed both your heart and your future, then this story was written for you. Sometimes love doesn't show up loud. It waits. It watches, it listens, and when the moment finally comes, it changes everything. So tell us in the comments, have you ever been the one who stayed silent too long? Or the one who finally broke the silence and said what needed to be said? We want to hear your story, because your voice matters, your journey matters. And if you believe real love doesn't hide forever, if you believe the quiet ones often love the deepest, then, like this video, share it with someone who understands that kind of patience. Subscribe to this channel, Mr. Charles Stories, where every week we share more stories that prove the right words. Always arrive in time. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay kind, and remember, sometimes the softest hearts leave the deepest marks.